We're going to really deep dive here, and I got a special guest tonight. All right, Josh, I'm going to say it. Josh Czupryk.
That's it.
I got it, sir. All right, Josh was Josh K12, and I'm going to introduce him when we get back after this video. Everybody knows the drill. All right, I got to ask you. Come on, you got to love it.
It was pretty great.
I love it. It makes you want to fight something like you're going to that movie theater. And I always tell everybody, Josh, that was the best $35 that I spent on the Fever app. This gentleman during COVID, he knew me for 2 years. I don't know, Pakistan, and a young kid, and we made that in 15 minutes after 2 years of knowing each other. I think I put all those pain points in of staffing, you know.
Yeah, you
And
did.
he
I
did
was
that in
seeing a lot
one
of
take.
trauma
One
back.
take he did that. And I was like, dude, you're freaking good. I don't think he understood me, but I said, you're freaking good. So I love it. So, hey, tonight, everybody, I want to introduce Josh. I'm going to have him talking about himself and what he does. And this is a great subject. And thanks, Josh, for coming on about it. But retention, and you'll get to know Josh, his background here. And Josh, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Josh Czupryk. So I'm the founder and president of Josh's K-12 Jobs Blast.
Love it.
So what that is it's a job board that started in September 2022. Right now, there are 1,496 jobs on it in kindergarten through 12th grade leadership across the states. Right now, there are 12,400 subscribers from all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. And it has just grown organically over the last 34 months. So I don't do any advertising, I don't do any paid marketing, but through word of mouth, people have just signed up and joined.
That's what I loved, and we'll put in the comments after the show. We'll put in there for them to get a hold of you, how they connect with you, put your email, put your everything, because the website. I went on there, I was like, whoa. I was like, all right. So see, this is why I love bringing on guests like this, because I mean, and when we reached out to each other, I was like, damn. I said, I can't believe how there's other options. It's just not Indeed. It's just not friggin' Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and all these other ones. There's a lot of great websites and people that have job boards that
Absolutely.
that you can get. I don't know if it's. Do you think it's companies like to come? We've talked about before the show, like because of cost, or because of like they're tired of the big Indeeds and bigger companies like that, and versus a smaller company.
Yeah, so I think that the part that specifically when you think about the vast majority of my folks are charter school networks, ed tech companies or nonprofits that
And the
support.
teachers, right? A lot of it's teachers. Okay.
So right now, out of the 12,400 I pulled before the show, roughly 3,000 are teachers. So the
Nice.
remaining folks are people that are assistant principals, principals. They work at a charter network office in a managing director role, a chief
Right.
role, a CEO. And so, number one, those folks typically have found jobs through the site over the last 34 months.
Right.
Then you find a job somewhere, you feel good about that place, you want to go back. Number two, you also know because people are organically signing up, right? I'm not buying a list. I'm not forcing
Right.
people to sign up. I'm not putting people on there that have not opted in. You have an engaged audience. So twice a month, I send out a newsletter.
Right.
My current leadership rate is about 68% of people open.
Nice.
And I mean, the visits I just looked, and in the first 7 months of the year, we're at 120,000
See,
visitors onto the website. So
right,
feeling good about where those things are. But I think it is because it's so targeted and because folks know the quality of the candidates that they're going to get
right,
from that target. That's what has happened. And I'm not the only niche job board out there. And I think it
right.
is a market because of the way that it can attract candidates.
That's what I mean. And when I looked at the job, and I saw the career different types. Okay, that's out of my norm. All right, it's not something, but I always tell people, listen, with recruiting and your background fits it because that's your niche, that's you, that's what you did, and you're an expert at it. Versus if I like how some people will say, oh, I can recruit for that. No, you can't. No, you can't. Because if you don't know it, listen, would I go after nurses and some medical field? No. I don't know the lingo. I don't know like the language. I don't know it all. Could I place somebody? Sure, but like we talked before this, you really deep dive in that process that you do to get people hired. You ain't messing around, man. You want the best candidate. You're putting those when you gave me those numbers of how many people applied, and we're going to get into the retention, but I got to hit that because I that was really cool how you said that. When you put up a job, you said sometimes you get that 2,000 freaking views of it and clicks, right? And
Mhm.
that's what I get upset about because on LinkedIn, you see that and you're like, how? How do you get seen with 2,000 interviews? Applicants. And I like how you do that. If you could walk us through it, like how you like to do it and about weeding out, getting it down to the great employees.
So weeding out, I always call it narrowing and matching, right? So this idea, and I know that's like corporate speak for nobody likes to be rejected from a job.
Right,
I have been rejected from literally probably 300 jobs because, again, we know I love a spreadsheet. I have tracked all my job searches before,
right,
been ghosted, had all the things that happen in the ring of hire opening happen before, right?
right.
So where I try to think through is we're trying to make a match, and we're trying to make a match for where a candidate is going to be able to go, add value, feel valuable, where an organization is going to be able to have somebody come in and bring value. And
Okay.
that match is not going to be forever. We don't live in a forever economy anymore. This is
All
not
right.
our grandparents' generation. We don't have pensions. People aren't staying in careers at the
Right.
same company for 40
That's the
years.
truth. Yes.
So, what I tell companies and what I tell folks that are applying is you are looking for this leg of the race. Okay.
Okay.
So, for this leg of the race, what makes sense to you if you're a job seeker, right? And
Right.
if you're an organization for this leg of the race, what skill set or profile makes sense? And then it's about finding that match.
Right.
The thing I try to tell job seekers is they see that 2000 number on the large
Okay.
job boards and they think that means 2000 applicants because it says that. What I try to explain is that's clicks. Okay. That doesn't mean that people actually applied.
Okay.
And so I
I
gave
didn't know.
you
That's
numbers.
good to know. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so people
Yeah,
get
I didn't
really
know.
discouraged. And so one thing I try to say is number one, worst case scenario is they're going to reject you or ghost you.
Right.
And if you can handle that, then throw your hat in. Right.
Right.
The second thing, though, is you only have so much energy as a job seeker. So does it
Right.
make sense to go and apply to 100 jobs of which maybe 10 or 15 are a really good match, right? Those
Okay.
other 85 to 90 might not be a great match and it's going to take your energy and time.
Right.
But I gave the numbers beforehand because I recently had a role. It had 3,215 clicks.
Wow.
But we had 186 applicants. And
Okay.
so I
Wow.
think that's an important distinction for job seekers to know because it's about a 5% ratio of when
Okay.
people click on a job to when people apply to a job. Now, that isn't quick apply. So if you see something where it's let me just quick apply, quick apply, quick
Yeah, we
apply,
talked about that. That's
you're probably going to have a higher ratio. I don't do quick apply. So if I'm hosting a role, I do want to know about you on the front end. And I am going to ask you optional questions about what brings your skill set to life in this role.
right.
It helps me get to know you beyond the 15 to 30 seconds we all spend as recruiters quickly
Right.
reviewing the resume. And it also helps me match to say, yep, this person is a fit for talking to in a phone screen because we want to make sure that we're saving resources for the organization and we're saving resources for the job
Well,
seeker. when there's
If I'd ask you on that, what how do you how do you recommend, like, when you see that a person sees that, does it all come down to the pre-screen questions? Does it all come down to, or how do you recommend, like, what do you tell someone in that job search right now that sees that right now? How can they get to you, the person that's doing the hard, you know what I mean? How can they get to you?
So we talked about before the show, I have a policy that I review every applicant
Right,
myself, because I do believe there are bad actors that are using AI to screen candidates without giving
right,
them a memo. Period. I don't know who they are, but I know they're out there.
right.
My policy is I'm going to look at every applicant
Okay,
and I'm going to assess every applicant and I'm going to score them. Now,
nice.
I disclosed to you beforehand. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you have seen me disclose this. I am autistic. My
Right,
brain works differently. I can sit and hyper focus for many, many hours and do repetitive tasks. It's
right.
just the way my brain works.
Your brain works.
Um, we call it AI, autistic intelligence, right?
Right,
So that I want to recognize that that's different, right? But how you get in front is you apply, right?
right.
And then for me, if you I think that the best way to guard against bias in a hiring process is to have a clear definition of the rubric of what you're looking for in a candidate ahead of time.
That's what
And
I
again,
like, when I want you to go over that, because when you
yep.
were talking before the show, you really, I enjoyed listening to how you said that 2 weeks, how you have a set time and you're very honest with that candidate.
And the organization. And I've
Right.
had to have really direct conversations on both sides. But if I run a search, we are going to number one, talk through the candidate profile before we
Okay.
get started. We're going to make sure the job description matches what the team and organization need and it's
Right.
clear and crisp because I have hated going into jobs with unclear job descriptions. I
Right.
step on toes, people step on my toes. I don't know what my goals are. No one should have that experience. Then we're going to take that information. And because I'm a former teacher, I know how to do understanding by design, backwards
Okay.
planning. And we're going to say, great, what do we need to see at the resume? What's the rubric? What are the phone screen questions? What's the rubric? What's the project? What's the rubric?
Okay.
Then, what's the final interview day look like? Who needs to be involved? Who are the stakeholders? How are we going to get comprehensive? What is the rubric? And then, what are the comprehensive scores? And quite frankly, what are the weights we're going to give?
Right.
So, for example, for a final score for a candidate, it doesn't make sense to weigh resume, phone screen, project, and final interview day all together as equal parts. It's just like if
Okay.
you were in a class and you were getting a syllabus,
Right.
homework is not the same as a final exam, right?
Okay.
And so we weigh differently, but we're going to agree on all of the rubrics and the weights and the scores before we open the pool.
Before you, okay.
Then we're going to set really clear and crisp. This is when we're opening. This is how long we're collecting applications. This is when we're closing. This is when we do a resume screen. This is when we do phone screens. This is when we do a project open and close.
Okay.
This is when we have 3 to 4 finalists. Part of what I also shared with you is when you tell candidates that on the front end and you say, hey, I'm really excited to talk to you, David. Number one, the salary is X, and I want to confirm that we're good
I
with that
I
before
like
moving.
that. I am totally for that. I just think it can just, because you get people that respond even afterwards on the job description. Well, that's too low. Wait a minute. You applied for it. You
You
know?
applied for it, and like, let's have the conversation on the front end because let's not waste your time as the job
Right.
seeker, right? If that is not meeting your salary requirements, which is completely fair,
Right.
then let's give you the 30 minutes back, right?
Right.
That's number one. Number two, one thing I'd then say is great. We're going to spend the first 5 minutes talking about the logistics of the search.
Okay.
This is when we are going to be doing phone screens. If you will hear by this date if you're moving to the project will open and close. You'll hear by this date if you're moving to a final
I
interview,
love that. I love it.
right? And the part that we all talked about, because I don't do individualized feedback for folks, I do say while you're not getting individualized feedback, you will hear from me one way or the other
Of the
by
other.
the deadline.
Right.
And if
Okay.
I have an organization and I've had clients that I have had to have conversations with, if they're not meeting the deadline, we may need to suspend the search and they may need to do it on their own.
Do you feel in your in the, the career and the jobs that you have posted in that type of background, I'm sure it's the same, that everybody wants to. Some people really want to know why. They want to know that why. Like the interview went so great. I fit the descriptions, I fit the salary. And some of them, I mean, I get it. I think they want to know, but I don't know. Sometimes I think you just have to give for yourself if you can. If you can give the honest opinion, sometimes I think it just being honest and upfront, at least something. Because if you don't,
Yep.
that's when that person, not everybody asks for, hey, why not? Why didn't they? But you get that maybe 3 out of 10, that'll say, like, what did I do? Like, what can I use this going forward? And I like your honesty, how you do that.
Yeah, so what I do with finalists is I give them an offer, and again, it's not feedback tied to the client,
Right.
but because I have the job board and I know the job trends over the last 34 months
Right.
within our sector, I offer time. Like if you want time to talk through what else is out there, where I think
I
I
love
see a
that.
match,
Yep.
it is fully optional. No one has to take it, but I want to make the offer because they've put in the time themselves. Number
Right.
one. Number two, I tell job seekers all the time, if you are not getting a phone screen, it's probably your resume.
Okay. That makes total sense. Yeah. I
If
agree.
you are getting phone screens, it is not your resume.
If you're what? I'm sorry.
If you're getting the phone screen, it's not your resume. Your
It's not
resume
your
is
resume.
not, right?
Okay.
If you're not moving on from the phone screen, you're probably saying too much, saying too little, or not answering the question.
Love it. Perfect. Yep.
If you get to the project and you don't pass the project, you probably don't have the hard skills for the role.
And you like to do that, Josh, because I like how you said, I mean, I hear horror stories sometimes. Somebody will be like, they want these big presentations. They want all this, and everybody says, I think they're doing it because they want, the answer. I'm like, no. I mean, I understand it for the positions. When you go on your website there, these are serious, these are really high-end jobs. You got to have that background. You can't just wing it. You're not going to go in there, but I kind of agree what you do on how you do that.
Well, and I'll say, like, again, if you don't move past the project, you probably didn't have the skill match. And
Right.
if you are a finalist, this is what I have to tell every finalist. If you are a finalist, you matched the skills, you matched the back, everything matched to get you to the
Right.
final. If you are not matched with the role, it is 99 times out of 100 in my experience because there is a team and
Okay.
they are looking for a complementary person to add to a skill that they may not have or that they may need to strengthen.
Okay.
And out of the 3 to 4 finalists, the one who gets the role probably adds the most to the skill. And that doesn't mean that you are
Yeah. I
not the right fit. It just means that you're looking for the team where your particular niche skill set can add the most value
right.
for that leg of the race.
Um, and how do you feel with the way you put it to us? And like I said, the shows with the retention. When you're doing your search like this and everything that you've done, how do you think it really helps employers for retention? Because now, I mean, for what you put in there, you're really putting some good, solid employees.
Yeah, I talked to my mentor today. Her name is Christina Greenberg. She runs Agility Search,
Right.
and she's been phenomenal as a mentor. But we were talking really about her concept of keep, sorry, find. I'm going to mess it up, but basically it's keep, find,
Right.
retain, hire, keep.
Right.
Okay. And so the idea is I want to help you find somebody. I don't want to help
Right.
you find the same person every year. Right. Because if I'm helping you find a principal for your school every single
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
that also means kids and families are getting a really bad experience. And so are teachers in the building.
Right.
Right. So I'm happy to help you find somebody. I'm happy to help you find a chief academic officer. But once you get them, what does it look like to stay?
Right.
And I've got 2 stories from 2 former bosses that I think just hit the nail on the head. The first one was from a boss who was CEO of a charter network when I was chief of staff.
Right.
And in our first check-in, so I'd already been there. I reported to somebody else, and she was like, "You're going to be my chief of staff." So I roll in to be chief of staff, and she goes, "This is going to feel really silly because we know each other, but I have 6 expectations. I'm
Okay.
going to state each expectation, and I'm going to ask that you give me a thumbs up and a verbal I agree to each
Okay.
of the 6. And then at the end, we're going to both sign saying we know the expectation." She says, that doesn't mean that you're going to get in trouble, but we're all human. We're going
Right.
to have to revisit the expectations.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And I love that. And I do that with every employee I've had ever since, number one. The second is I had a boss, my superintendent of the role that I just retired from.
Right.
It was phenomenal. She's a friend, Dr. Parrish, and she talked about really this idea of as a team, we form, we storm, we norm, and then we perform. And it's a cycle.
Okay.
And it doesn't happen once. You are continually forming, you are continually storming, you're
Right.
continually norming, and then you're continually performing. And you have to be comfortable with that. And what I brought to that conversation as our assistant superintendent is Brene Brown, clear as kind. If
Right.
you are thinking something about an employee or an employee is thinking something about you, we just need to say it, right? Because there
Right.
is a way to say it that is not mean, but in American culture, and I'm in the South, in Southern culture, sometimes it's seen as more polite to just be
Just
quiet,
different.
just be deferential. And
Right.
it just causes so many more cultural issues and causes people to leave. And so I think having really clear expectations, knowing what those expectations are, number
Right.
one.
Number one.
Number two, knowing that you're going to storm, having protocols in place to know how do we then norm. If we start storming, how do
Right.
we then norm? So that way people don't get their feelings hurt, don't start looking for a job.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's right. And then how do we go back and say in our job descriptions, here's my lane, here's my authority of responsibility and decision
Right.
making. Here's where it starts, here's where it stops, here's where yours starts, here's where it stops, and making sure that we're not stepping on one another's toes. So I think that's the first piece for me of retention
Right.
is just real clarity. And
The
again,
clarity.
as somebody who's autistic, that is what I've had to say to every boss. Just tell me. If you just tell me, here's the expectation, I'm
Right.
gonna knock it out of the ballpark. But if you're gonna leave me to guess a social cue,
Right.
best
It's
of
not.
luck.
No, I could imagine. Joel says, "Good evening, Ring of Hire and followers." Joel, you need to connect with Josh here. He's a great guest here, and I think you really like Joel. He's not too far from me, about an hour. He's been on the show. He comes on and talks about leadership a lot. He's been
Love
a
that.
former Marine, so he's out there. I wanted to bring up. We talked before with challenges with retention and everything like that, and you see it changing on LinkedIn a lot, even how companies are talking, with the remote challenge that we talked about. Um, remote was really big, it was really top notch, but it seems like all these companies are just saying you're coming back to the office. Over, you see it on, you can't help it on LinkedIn, it's all over. Some of the challenges, do you see, like, do you get a lot of, like, even candidates reach out to you about reaching out as part of it, like if there's a hybrid opportunities or even remote? Is that like the first thing some of them say? If you were to post that job, would you get 5,000 clicks on it versus if it was, just at the office? Because that seems to be one of the big challenges on how to read. I didn't think it was going to be hard to retain people sometimes on remote work.
I think culture matters, whether you're remote or in the office. If you hate your
Right.
boss, you hate your boss.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's number one. I think number two, I'm getting used to it. I'm in month 4 of being remote because I work from home for
Right.
myself.
Right.
And I have 2 clients that are schools in Memphis now because I need to be able to go a couple of times a month minimum and put on work clothes, right?
Right.
And go to an in-person meeting and talk to humans. That's just something I've
I
learned
love it.
about life, right?
Right.
But I think number 3, and I warn employers about this all the time, we are in an employer market for
Right.
sure.
Right.
We had an employee market in 2021. How you currently treat your employees while you're in an employer market is going to fully dictate whether or not your employees stay when the
Yeah.
market inevitably switches back.
I agree.
Word of mouth also matters. Glassdoor you have to take with a grain of salt because who's going to take the transaction cost? A very angry ex-employee.
Right.
But there's a kernel of truth in a lot of the posts that I have read. And
Right.
so I think for folks, when I see organizations forcing people back to the office, you're going to get them there right now.
Yeah.
And then at the moment that it switches back to an employee market, they're
Right.
gone. Your
They're gone.
institutional knowledge is gone. You're going to have to spend a ton on staffing.
Yep.
Just treat people nicely. I mean, I don't feel like it's that hard.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't mean that you have to be a pushover. Happy doesn't mean crappy, right?
Right.
It does mean that we're doing great work, we're getting feedback, we are performing.
Right.
But at the same time, you are 100% going to get people, many more applicants if it is remote. It is way
Yeah.
more competitive.
Yeah. I mean,
One
that's
thing,
it seems they want that. They want it, they want it bad,
well, and it's been fascinating to me because when you push organizations on why a role needs to be in person, there is a sense from my perspective of uncomfortable, insecure management styles that want to
It
be
comes to
able to
that.
put their eyes on people. Where I'm
Right.
like, if you were good at managing people, it wouldn't matter if they were remote or not, right? Like, you're not solving for your problem.
Right. Joel says make their work feel worthwhile and what they do daily. That's true. I agree with that. And they even talk about how would work remote challenges. When I saw that, I was like, isolation, lack of belonging, and they talk about different things like that. And I'm like, I didn't do remote too long, only for about a year or so. And I, I kind of like the hybrid if I had to go. Unless you're really disciplined, I didn't realize there was issues. Would like, how do you manage remote workers? That's a chore in itself. I'm sure because I look at that and I'm like, how do you engage with people when everybody's at home? And I know they're all the new softwares and how they keep you. There's all different things, but uh, I didn't realize there was a lot to it, versus trouble managing the group. And there is a higher turnover too. I guess maybe there is. You always say, well, are people working? Are they not working? Or they're doing this? They're working more hours, they say, than they did if they were in the office. So I kind of look at that and I say, I didn't think it was a challenge.
I think I was remote as well during COVID as we were doing remote school. And of course, so the way that we thought about it is we were like, if you put children and adults on
Right.
Zoom from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. every day, no, it's going to be bad, right?
Right.
So what we ended up moving to was asynchronous work for kids, synchronous Zoom, very purposeful 20-minute meetings. We're like, hey, we're going to have a small group lesson about this thing at 11 o'clock. We're going to
Right.
have another one at 1 o'clock. We're going to have one at 3 o'clock, right? And then in between, you work on your stuff. You can call the teacher, right? And it seemed to work really well. I'm going to go back to, because I work for myself, I
Right.
do work at full capacity, but I take breaks. I
Right.
go for a walk. I don't have to move my mouse to stay green on Teams, right?
Right.
I get way more work done
Right.
than when I was in meetings all day, right? And that's
Right.
no shade to meetings, and I loved my team, but if I can just put my head down and knock some stuff out, I can do it. And I think we punish high performers. And I think we say you've got to be online for 45 hours a week, even though you
Right.
can do your work in 12, because John Doe over here, also on the team, needs 45 hours to do the same amount of work it takes you to do
Right.
12s. And so I think we punish people when really, exactly to what Joel said, if you give people rewarding work,
Right.
and you give them clear definitions and boundaries of their decision
Right.
rights, their
Yep.
responsibilities, and their goals, they're probably going to do a good job. And bad managers are bad managers in person, hybrid, and remote.
Well, that's what I look at when I look at companies. We've all been at them. When there's high turnover, everybody knows why. We all know why. I don't care what anybody says. I get irritated. Here I go. I'm going to get irritated about it because if you know the problem, all right, I don't care how big your company. This could be in a smaller, but 25 people. If you're losing everybody each week and day after day, and you're the cost, and we're going to go over that. The leadership, I blame the leadership on that. I really do. Listen, it comes to you, whoever's at the top going down, but you got to know that retention cost big time. We were even talking about that. Like I said, you're trying to find that right candidate to try to reduce the retention, right? I mean, that's the goal. You want to get that right candidate. But if you're not getting, I can see the importance so much of that. You're not getting that right one. Wow, are you going to lose? You're going to lose.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a great study from TNTP where my wife works. It was formerly known as the New Teacher Project,
Right.
but it came out in 2013, and it was called The Irreplaceables. And I still make people read it, even though we are 12 years later. essentially Washington, D.C. was losing teachers.
Right.
And they were like, why are we losing teachers? And so TNTP was like, well, why don't we do a research study? And the hypothesis was that they were losing, quote, low performing teachers every year.
I can't believe the retention on teachers is that high. Like until I saw your website, I was like, Jesus. I'm like, what the heck? Is it such a high turnover in those areas or not?
Well, so what we found, well, I wasn't a part of the project, but I feel like I've talked about the irreplaceable so much, it makes me feel like I'm in first person. But
Right.
what they found was it wasn't the low performers that were leaving. It was all the really highly rated teachers that were getting the
Okay.
highest growth results were leaving every year.
Every year.
And they were leaving because number one, they felt disrespected by their
But
bosses.
what is that, Joe? I mean, Josh, what does that mean though? When we say that, I know we say it, but like, what does it mean disrespected? Are they looking at like, what do they want? Are they missing something? Are we not, as the leaders, are we not providing them something to feel disrespected? I mean, it could be like their work. Maybe they don't watch other people get away with this. There's so many different things, but do you see anything like that word of disrespected? Is that a big problem that you feel in those areas?
I do. I think specifically in K-12, we have shifted over the last 25 years from seeing teachers as subject matter experts
Right.
to widgets in a machine. And so we feel like we can just reload and get all brand new teachers every single
Yeah.
year, flush our institutional knowledge. And I think what we've seen is a reticence from college graduates to
Right.
go into teaching, right?
I
And
want to teach.
so our talent pool has continued to dwindle. But ultimately, the disrespect from my perspective, nobody's going into teaching to be rich,
Right.
period.
No, no, you're right.
But if you have hired a seventh grade math teacher and you do not trust them to be the subject matter experts in seventh grade math, then why did you hire them?
Right.
If you are going to second guess, you're going to make them script every single word of every single lesson plan, then you don't trust them.
That makes
And I
sense.
think that trust being the foundation of disrespect is the thing that actually drives teachers out. And I would assume that cannot be only in K-12 education.
Right.
And so it really is, you just talked about it, the software that's making sure that you're online and that your bathroom breaks are only 2 minutes. And, like
Man, do you think they really do some of that? I'd be like, "Whoa." I'd be like, "Jesus," but I guess they do
call
what they do.
centers, 100%. Like I've had parents in schools that I've worked in that worked at call centers that 100% happens,
Right.
whether you're in person or remote. And again, I think it's because you have bad managers who don't know how
Right.
to manage, who don't trust themselves, then they rely on systems that disrespect people.
Right. And just then when that comes up because I told you before, in management jobs and listen, I'll go for a teacher any day. And I told you I'm really for that. And the reason is you can always learn the job. I told you that. You can always learn that job, but you can't teach leadership and you can't teach, you know, these are people that learn how to teach someone. So when you as as crazy as that sounds, think about it. They know the skill set of how to teach people, and that's what you want to get a great team. You want that person to be able to share that knowledge, and they have ways of doing that. They've been to school, they've been to college, they know what to do in their experience. But I'll take a teacher any day.
100%.
Over that transferable skills, and I think that is what's hard too in some of the industry is you got to give that a chance. You know, I believe you probably agree on that. I mean, you take a certain set of skills and they're they're transferable. You can put them in that thing. Just teach them the job. Again, I keep saying that, but what else are you going to do?
I saw a great graphic a few months ago at this point, but it was somebody who was explaining to teachers you maintain 25 to 30
Right,
in an elementary school family relationships.
right.
That is what sales is. If
Yeah,
you
for
are in
that.
high school, you are managing 100 to 125 relationships. That
Right,
is what sales is. If you are building your curriculum or you're taking high quality instructional materials and you're customizing them, that
right,
is what instructional design is, right? There are all of these things that translate over to private sector roles. And we see teachers who transition to ed tech or nonprofits that stay in K
right,
12. But I also see teachers lead to be realtors, to be bankers, to be insurance, to do sales in the private sector. It is transferable. And I think the other part that people the mindset that I wish we could wave a magic wand and wipe
Right.
out in this country is that teachers are less than.
Right.
Because when I talk to people in the private sector, um, I don't know, there's just this begrudging disdain of, oh, like they work for having the summers off and it's not that
I know
hard.
you
And
hear that all the time. You hear
we
that all
wouldn't
the time.
last 3 days in the classroum, right?
I had one of
So
my
I think,
friends. Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, like, people wouldn't last 3 days.
Yeah.
Um, now I will say I tell people that my LinkedIn messages feel a little bit like a Dear Abby, um, where, and I'm dating myself there, I would read it every Thursday in the
Right.
90s in our newspaper, but where people are like, I'm so frustrated, da 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 da, I want to leave the classroom. Yeah, I get it. Your principal's crazy. That makes
Right.
sense. But then I have gotten messages from people that have left for the private sector that write back, I miss the rush. I miss the year. I miss the
Right.
seasons of the year, right? Like, I'm remote. I miss going in and the energy. And so I do think, what does it look like to still have that energy? Or if you want to stay in K-12, find a place that will let you do that,
Right.
right? And still feel like you are doing the thing that you got into the profession for the first place. So that's just where my brain has gone.
That's
Is
what I have a
the
friend.
grass isn't always greener.
Right. I have a friend, she's a 6th grade teacher, and she left the school system, and I was like, "Why?" She was my son's favorite teacher, and she just said, "Dave, she had a young one, and then she had a baby, and she was just telling me," she says, "from the morning to the end," and then they wanted to teach other classes on top of it, the time, and you could tell she left. "I can't do it." She said, "I had to," and that's where we talk about how, work-life balance, and everybody says that, like, I always say since COVID, but I never heard of that until COVID, work-life balance. But how does someone like that, where do you go after that? And how do many people do that because of work-life balance? I don't know how you, and in teaching, besides, like you said, everybody says they get the summers off. That's not it. Like you said, from morning till night, and then grading and all the different things that they do, it's not just 8, 10 hours a day. It's a lot.
Yeah, so I think I had a really unique perspective in my last role.
Right.
So we were a set of training and laboratory schools on a university campus at the University
Right.
of Memphis. So we had, an early childhood center that started at 2 years old, an elementary, a middle, and a high school. And our teachers at our schools had a faculty designation at the universities. They were
Right.
just like any other professor. They were just a professor who taught second grade as opposed to psychology for undergrads.
Right.
And the rationale is they were also serving as training teachers. So when college ed had residents, they would train in their classrooms and learn the profession, and that was their internship. Okay. But I had this whole moment when I started the jobs class, started getting all of these messages from transitioning teachers, and I walked up, one day it was like 7:50 in the morning. I'm walking into our middle and high school where my office is. I'm watching all of our teachers opening up
Right.
doors for cars and doing morning duty. And then I watched one of my friends who works in the business school across the street, and he's not opening doors for undergrad cars.
Right.
He's not monitoring whether the doctoral students are getting to class because he's a professor, right?
Right.
And it made me start to think, wait a minute, why are we expecting our professors working at the early childhood, elementary, middle, and high to
Right.
do these ancillary duties? We have not sent the professors to the university center to monitor lunch. We expect that the undergrads can get Chick-fil-A and chill, and they do,
Right.
right? And so one thing I started to think through in the role and have really been pushing school leaders and network leaders across the country. How can you hire a fleet of paraprofessionals or assistant teachers that do morning duty, that do
Right.
lunch duty, that do afternoon duty, that do study hall? And then you can give your faculty members the opportunity. They plan, they teach, they research. If they need to go get their kid early or go to
Right.
a doctor's appointment, like it's
There's a lot.
it's a lot, and I think it's a white collar profession that has blue collar restrictions,
Right.
and I think there are ways for us to make it a white collar profession that, just like being an attorney a doctor or a dentist, you have flexibility in your day.
Right.
We could build it in for teachers, and I've watched schools do it. One school here in Memphis that has phenomenal teacher retention. It's called Libertas School of Memphis. It's a
Right.
public charter Montessori school. Not only have they built that model, they've built a co-teaching model, but they were also losing teachers exactly like your son's favorite teacher that were
Right.
having littles. So they opened a daycare inside the elementary school, and teachers get priority. They do pay a little bit, but
Right.
nowhere near what they
I've
would
seen that
pay.
Johnson& Johnson did that. They did that.
And they kept their teachers, right?
Yeah.
So there are ways for you to identify the root causes of retention.
Do you see the change in the industry though since COVID? Do you see it changing or
I see right now a backlog. So I see that because, you know, ring of fire, I'll say it, because the federal funds for
Right.
education have been suspended, and that's 10% of everybody's budget across the country.
Right.
There have been hiring freezes at district
Same thing.
offices, nonprofits. The only places I'm seeing hire at a higher rate right now
Right.
are ed tech firms, and that is because they have investors who believe in technology companies.
Right.
That's why.
They can do
But
that.
we have a backlog. So we have teachers that want to transition. We have leaders that want to transition, but
Right.
there's nowhere to go yet.
That's the whole thing. No.
Once things stabilize and hiring starts again, as what I said at the beginning, how you treat your people
Right.
when it's an employee market or an employer market dictates how they're going to respond when it's an employee market.
When it switches and everybody says that. Josh, I wanna thanks. I'm looking at the call, I'm like, wow, we've gone almost 45 minutes. And I'm like, I always cut trees down, I always say, because this was our show tonight. Now, I don't even think I got to a quarter of it. It was very interesting to talk to you about things. And I think I've learned more tonight about teaching and what you do. But I want to take this moment again. If you could just introduce yourself one more time, what you do, how did they get a hold of you? If they're looking for a job, how do they just reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's K12jobsblast.org. When you go to the site, you can click on job board, and that'll take
I
you
saw
to
that. Yep, right on LinkedIn, right on your LinkedIn profile was right there.
take it right there. Okay. It also has a free sign up. And again, the only person who sees that you signed up is me.
Okay.
And I'm going to also be really frank. I don't look at every single person who signs up. I've had friends who are like, I signed up today. I'm like, that's so cool. Um, I didn't look. I
I
was
love
doing
it.
other things.
Right.
There's a resume template that's free. So if you want to see how to build a resume from my perspective,
Okay.
it's right there. I have an AI chatbot that you can copy and paste your resume, and it will walk you through how to clean it up.
Nice.
I have a
Okay.
new free tool that you can use to track all of the jobs that you have applied to and where you are in the process. It
Okay.
also has some AI prompts in there where if you want to practice customizing your cover letter, your resume, everything's free. And the reason it's free is because I have looked for a job and it sucked.
Yeah, you
And
said you
so
like helping. You really enjoy helping people. You said you know what it's like, and that's why you got into what you do. You have to do what you do. I mean, you're changing somebody's life. Let's face it.
I'm I'm not gonna lie, I get a message a week of somebody who found a job on the job board and it keeps me going. All right. So
Yeah.
reach out anytime and you can email me. It's Josh at K12jobsblast.org. I ask people to give me 24 to 48 hours, but I will get you a reply.
Thank you.
And just excited to continue to help people find that next right job for the next leg of the race.
All right, and if you could put that under the comments once we're done with the show, if you could put that in there, how to get a hold of you and what you do, I think it's great, and I've learned a lot from you. So, how's the weather down in Memphis? 'Cause it's hot
Man,
here
I
in Pennsylvania.
it was deceptively muggy today, so we had a probably 100% humidity. But I was like, I'm gonna take a
Ugh,
walk. It's cloudy, and Memphis is the tip of the Mississippi Delta,
right,
and so we can grow great, soybeans, corn, whatever you
love
want. We
it.
got great ground, but the
Right,
weather is hot.
it's hot. I can imagine. All right, I'm going to do this video, everybody, and Josh, I'll talk to you right after this video. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome, thanks.
Oh, there we go.